Welcome to Brain and Gain, the game where we use our brains to get better gains, and hopefully get some brain gains along the way. I am Andy Squatsby, Hodby, from Squatsby Strength, and I'm a powerlifter and evidence-based strength and nutrition coach. Today playing the game is Charlie Beestone. We start with character creation and find out everything that made Charlie the character that he is today. Then the tutorial level, where we learn some useful things, followed by the boss battle, where we defeat our biggest challenges, and much more. This is a real open world adventure, this one, talking about all sorts of philosophy, psychology, and a lot of practical nutrition coaching techniques as well. Enjoy the game. Charlie, starting with character creation, what did you do to end up as the character that you are today? What's your story?
Brilliant. So, as a kid, I started off as a kid because that is where I started. I played a lot of sport, and I was all right, but I wasn't that good. So I was like, I would like to work in sport. At first, I thought I was going to be a physio because that was like the only job when you're at school that's to do with sport where you could work in sport. And then I didn't really work at my GCSEs, and then my A-levels, and it quickly became apparent that I wasn't going to be a physiotherapist because I did not have the grade you need. But then I heard about sports science, so I did a sports science degree. And then during the second year of that, I did a nutrition module, which was interesting because S&C coaches were all just like knuckle draggers. They're all based in Neanderthals. So I was like, I don't want to do that either. I did about a year of like work experience part-time as an S&C, and I was like, nah. So then I was like, oh yeah, nutrition, I quite like that. So I got a master's in sports nutrition from Loughborough University. Interned as a nutritionist with all of their sports teams, which is quite cool because obviously they're all university athletes, and I'm now seeing some of those people I worked with represent our country in various sports, which is quite nice.
Loughborough's high end as well, isn't it?
Yeah,
Sport
yeah,
world, yeah.
Yeah. The sport, like the students are people that are on my course. You think like, oh, it's the creme de la creme in our industry, and that wasn't necessarily the case. But obviously I am, but the rest of them weren't. And then, so I interned there, and then about a year and a half after I finished, or about a year after I finished, I got a job at Hodby University, which is near Gloucester. And they're basically, all they do is sport, really. And I was a nutritionist there for 2.5 years. There was 410 athletes, roughly, across loads of different sports. I was a nutritionist there, and then was working on my own shit alongside that. And my own shit is what I do today, really. So I'm self-employed as a nutritionist, working one-to-one with people. And I also have a separate corporate wellness business where we do the business side of it, some one-to-one like executive coaching, and a lot of workshop type stuff in groups. Yeah. So that's a really long version of how I got here.
Cool. Is that, was it Koru or something?
Koru. Yeah.
Koru. Yeah, I've seen that. Yeah.
It's a Maori word.
Oh, is it really?
Like,
what do you mean?
Yeah, for like new starts, new beginning, but also like for things that have two elements to it. And we're quite keen on like the wellness side of it, but also on like cognitive performance, because Owen, who I work on that with, is an S&C coach, but he's less of a knuckle dragger than others. So we both like have a performance background. He used to work at Mercedes F1, so like we like the cognitive performance side of it, but also the wellness stuff is what a lot of people want. So we wanted to sort of represent the fact that there were two sides to the business.
Cool. What's your sport, mate?
Cricket. Yeah, proper exciting one. I know everyone goes mental for that. I normally drop that in the first date early on. But by the way, I play village cricket, and that seals the deal then quite early on.
I thought you were going to say that's like a filter. You got to start as you mean to go on.
Well, yeah.
You don't want to get serious, and then they realise that you leave them all weekends.
Pretty much. Yeah, I don't drop it in until they're already way too deep. And by the way, look, I'm out all day. If you come and watch, there is some tea halfway through.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, that's pretty much it, really. It was football as a kid. So it used to be football and rugby in the winter, cricket in the summer. And then I was quite lazy and a bit tubby as a child. So I was great at football. I used to play up front, scored 20-odd goals a year. And then they brought in the offside rule around about the age of 11 or 12. And you have to keep up with everyone else. And I was like, nah, bollocks to this. Standing next to the goal and I would score. But yeah, running around, now right things. So cricket, you don't have to do that. Just stand there.
That's my sporting trick. If I can get away with it. Played hockey this morning, and I was goaltending for sure. Just waiting
Hockey,
for the
see,
cheeky shots.
hockey's like cricket, and it's a lot more brutal than people think.
Mm.
Like, you do sound like you're almost reluctant to tell people they're your sports, but like, yeah, chance of getting hit in the face and it hurting are much higher in those sports than other sports.
Someone always gets injured playing hockey.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of teeth and things go in my time, and noses, broken pretty much all my fingers. Like, yeah,
it's
savage.
hardball. What would you say, mate? What would you say is the most useful bit of education that you've done? Because obviously you've done various different like subjects and degrees and courses and things.
That's a great question.
Thank you.
I never get asked that because people just assume that degrees are useful, and therefore you've done two, so they must be the most useful, which I presume is why you asked. What's your education background?
I did not have a degree. I stopped after A levels. I joined the Air Force at 19. So I don't have any of that. I've got level 3 PT, S&C, MNU certified nutrition, and I've done psychology courses off-site choir. So I did motivation interviewing, ACT, FACT, all those kind of things. I wanted to do a psychology degree, so I'll leave the Air Force next year. I'm going to do this full-time, not podcasting, coaching. One can dream.
Chatting to idiots full-time.
There's plenty of people doing it, so it must work.
True.
Yeah, coaching full-time, so I want to do a psychology degree.
Yeah. See, if I went back now, I'd do a psych degree. But so I was always interested in, having worked in sport. We'll come back to your question then. Sorry, I've sidestepped.
You go on whatever tangent you want.
But obviously, I used to work in a college and university in sport, and we know that the risk of eating disorders in sport is higher, like percentage-wise, much higher in sport, particularly in like not weight-making sports necessarily, but sports have an emphasis on leanness as well, so endurance sports. And then they're higher in college and university students, particularly girls. So when you work with teenage girls in sport, prevalence was massive. And I always looked at like what route could I take to work in that, because it was really interesting to me. But dietetics is a long route, and there's a lot of placements and stuff, and it's expensive. Clinical psych is an even longer route to get to that stage. So yeah, I'd love to do psych. And I remember you posting about your psych courses not that long ago, and I'm really interested in them. Like, I love MI stuff, love the ACT stuff.
Oh, so useful.
Yeah, the crossover is huge, isn't it? I don't think people understand that. I don't know if you find this, but like the MI stuff, I don't use as much, because if someone's coming to work with you, a lot of that stuff where you're sort of getting them to the point of change, they're already there. That's why they're paying you money.
Yeah. There's aspects of it that I pick out. So like in my everyday life, and also in coaching, I use like the active listening techniques, ALLs, open questions, affirmations, reflections, summaries for anybody listening. They're like super useful. I like the spirit of MI, which is like you're not trying to manipulate people. What's it called? Universal positive regard. Not universal, something positive regard. Like you always think the best of the person that you're working with and talking to, basically. So you're not going to think, oh, you've done that because you're lazy, or or you're just not listening to me, like those kind of things.
Do you find
it, but I know exactly what you mean.
Yeah, they're useful later on. Actually, if someone's got to 6-8 weeks and struggling, then I find like the change talk stuff a lot more useful.
Yeah,
but up front, not as much. I find that a lot of the stuff on those sorts of things sometimes comes as a surprise to people. Like the universal regard's a great example, where if you coach people that, or tell people that, they're like, oh, really? That's really interesting. But it always felt quite natural to me that that's what coaching was. I remember when we talk about qualifications, actually, one of the least useful but ones that I had was something called the Talented Athlete Lifestyle Scholarship or Scheme or something. So basically, performance lifestyle coach is a legit role now in sport, particularly in like the English Institute of Sport for all the Olympic sports. And the performance lifestyle coach's job is basically helping athletes with everything outside of sport. So depending on what the sport is, it could be in careers, it could be in sponsorship, it can be in helping them use the other support services. Like it's not a very well defined role, which I quite liked, because it meant I could do whatever I liked within my scope of practice. But And on that course, you would have people and they'd be like, oh, actually, if you just listen to an athlete rather than just tell them what to do and shout at them, they get much better. And like there were people scribbling this down. And I was like, fuck me, this is news to you. And there were all coaches in there, like skills coaches, a lot of them. They were like, this is unbelievable stuff. I'm like, if I couldn't do this, I wouldn't have a job. Like, this isn't new. So that wasn't, in answer to your question, what was most useful? That was not it. Most useful, I don't even think, I might even cheat and say none of my qualifications were. The most useful thing was my internship.
Yeah.
Experience. Which was like, which was semi-taught in that we'd chat once a week. There were 6 of us. And the guy in charge, who was actually the nutritionist, who's worked for like the Canadian Olympic cycling team, and he worked much higher than me in terms of sport. And you'd sit and say, oh, I spoke to this person, this went really well, this didn't go well. I actually had this question about the nutrition side of it, and now can we chat about that? And that was the most useful thing. Alongside the MSc, it was good, but some of the MSc stuff was, what frustrated me with my masters is we got taught in lectures the basics, and then they'd be like, this is your assignment or your learning, go and write an assignment on this. And that was the advanced stuff. And that never made sense to me. It should always be, for me, like, here's the basic stuff you can get out of a textbook, go and learn that, otherwise you can't come to the lecture and learn this advanced stuff that I'm going to teach you. So as an example, we like did the basics of carbohydrate for 3 lectures, and then our essay was on the use of like carbohydrate periodization, so like train low stuff for adaptation in endurance sports. And this was 6 years ago, so this stuff was really quite new still. And so finding literature on that was really hard. And I was just like, why are we not talking about this in a class? Why are you leaving me to try and guess this on my own? So uni was good, but there were frustrations with it. The cost is phenomenal now, isn't it? To the point where a lot of people are thinking, is it worth it? So although my degrees were useful, internship really, because we, like, you know, like coaching is soft skills, and my soft skills were dreadful. So bad. I was just a really shy student, teenager. It was only at my master's really when I was 21, 22, where I started feeling confident speaking to people that I didn't know. But that was through like the first half of that internship. I'd sit in team meetings of sports and just not say a word. You wouldn't know I was there. I was by far and away out of the 6 of us, and I think they'd all say this, the best read in terms of literature. I could name what the study said, who it was by, who they looked at, everything off the top of my head. But put me in front of a group where I've got to present all of this in a way they'd understand 30 people. Shocking. So that was the biggest work on. And there's the stuff that you just don't get from uni, you get from fucking up in person, really. So yeah, I'd say an internship was the most useful thing for me as a coach. And a person, probably.
You have to do those things, don't you? You have to experience, you have to practice sort of skill, like the soft skills, particularly, like you're saying. I'm kind of surprised that you were like shy almost.
It surprises a lot of people. Yeah.
And I think that's just like the impression that you get online and stuff. And on the other hand, it doesn't surprise me because I'm super introverted. I love doing this, like talking one-on-one with people, and I'm fine with that. And also I'm fine with public speaking. Probably because I had a lot of practice of that. I've like taken opportunities to do quite a bit of that. So I can see how you're probably similar to me in that way, that you're naturally quite introverted, but you enjoy those aspects of it. I really like that kind of the way you think the education should be the other way around. I think that's cool, because if you have people coming in at different levels as well, with different levels of knowledge, they can just learn that on their own, the basics, or they might already know it, and they can just like skim it and go, yeah, like I'm happy with this. Because when I was thinking about doing a degree, I was thinking about, you know, I could go and do some kind of sports science degree, and part of what put me off is, do you know what? A lot of these lectures are going to be stuff that I already know, and like not in a big-headed way, but I've been doing this for a few years now. I'm highly evidence-based, so I'm deep into research every day. Get research reviews, reading literature all the time. So that kind of put me off. So that's another thing that kind of pushed me in the like psychology direction, where I'm not being as deep in the research. Yeah,
that makes sense. I mean, there's so much to say there. One of the things that I always think is sports science research is written very differently to psych research, and it's much easier to understand. Obviously, there's a massive stats element to psych research, which is just hard to teach yourself. it's hard to motivate yourself to teach yourself, I think. One of the big things for uni, I think, that taught me was critical thinking.
Yeah.
But on the flip side, I don't think it taught everyone on my course that. There's still people. So interesting what you're saying about everyone starts from a different place. We used to have on the masters, obviously everyone came from, some people had done a nutrition course. We had dietitians on there coming to just top up their knowledge on sport. And some of the biases that people held just because this is what we've been told as dietitians rather than this is what the evidence says was amazing. We had a guy called David Clayton who actually was a family friend of ours before I went to uni, weirdly. He has done a lot of research on the sort of intermittent fasting 5-2 type stuff and the impact on appetite regulation. And so he was sort of presenting research showing that actually, from an appetite perspective, it seems that people can tolerate these sort of things relatively well. And actually, we do have decent outcomes in terms of weight and things like that. And just the amount of dietitians that were like, yeah, but breakfast. And he's like, yeah, but not all the time for everyone. They're like, yeah, but remember like breakfast and how important breakfast is. You got to have breakfast. And he's just like, yeah, but like this is actual data that I've collected. In these people, it didn't matter. Yeah, no, I get that, but breakfast is really important. Oh, okay, yeah, cool. So there's nothing that will change your mind on breakfast. Breakfast is an interesting one. I've gone back and forth on breakfast in my head a lot.
Yeah.
How do you feel about it? So in terms of like, if you're working with a client, would you be like breakfast, no breakfast?
This is a bit of a cop out, but like it's completely context dependent, isn't it?
Yeah.
Like, I'm sure you'll agree with me. Because like if you're not hungry and you want to skip breakfast, then do it. And if your goal is weight loss, or you're struggling to maintain, anywhere on that kind of spectrum, then that's an instant reduction to your eating window, and that's probably going to be a benefit. We know that it's not a detriment to muscle gain, those kind of things, benefits to hunger signals and those kind of things that you're talking about as well. So there's loads of benefits, but also if someone's trying to gain muscle and they're struggling to fit those calories in, then it's the opposite, isn't it? And you're like, well, yeah, start eating earlier, eat more often. If someone's struggling with a regular eating pattern and it's more a relationship with food kind of thing, then it's probably also a good thing to have breakfast and make that a more substantial meal. So so many factors. I don't think there's a black and white answer. Breakfast, yes or no?
No. Yeah, and I think I'm exactly the same. I think the one reason it's changed and I've been breakfast more I say breakfast more. I never recommend it, but if someone says I don't have breakfast, is that okay? And I'll be more inclined to say, I think you probably should. Is the relationship with food like I find myself snacking after 7 and can't stop? You're like, well, you've let yourself get that hungry because you're saving calories, but you eat 3,000 calories because you're starving, then breakfast is a good idea. It's interesting how many people sort of like make up things that will happen if you don't have breakfast or if you have breakfast. So stuff like, oh yeah, well, you just won't be able to concentrate all morning. How are you going to concentrate if you're not having any food? Well, obviously, and there's like some evidence of that in children, which I think fair enough. Child nutrition, not my ball game. I don't comment on it because it's just different. So from like 14 down, I'm not interested. Not interested, but yeah, not interested actually. No, I don't give a fuck. I just don't know anything about it. But like from that up, there's no evidence showing that athletes' cognitive abilities are impaired without a morning meal. I know a lot of people, me personally, anecdotally, perform better without food in the morning.
Yeah.
So I'm very much a weekday. Yeah, a weekday, like not until 11 o'clock sort of breakfast. Weekends, I probably have breakfast because weekend breakfast choices, you've got a bit of time and it's just nicer, aren't they? I've got time to cook. I love to cook breakfast.
I do almost exactly the same thing, mate. Yeah. Exactly what I do. It's funny. Like, people just love a black and white answer, don't they? Black and white thinking.
Yeah.
So you see it all the time. I listened to Eric Trexler, Strong by Science podcast.
Yeah.
He was talking in the last episode about like a modified one meal a day. So one meal a day seems to be getting more popular, which is like the extreme of this windowed eating where you eat for like an hour or 2 hours, one meal in the evening. But that comes with all sorts of issues like protein distribution. How do you put your workout? Do you put it before that when you fasted or after it when you've just ate a fuckload of food? Like, it doesn't make any sense. So he said he sometimes does this kind of modified one meal a day where he'll just have a protein shake or like a couple of protein servings with not much else through the day, and then most of his food in that one meal window in the evening. And like, oh, mind blowing, like amazing. But these 1 meal a day people, it's gaining popularity. The people that talk
It's
about it are
interesting, isn't it?
like, no, it's the way, and like, there's so many benefits. Just 1 meal a day, you cannot eat outside of this 1 meal a day. Like, why?
Yeah.
Like, the middle ground is like the best of both worlds. Like all the advantages, not the disadvantages.
The fasting stuff's so interesting to me, and it's one of those weird areas where I will read and read and read, but will rarely implement because I just don't have that many clients that. So again, if you're working on your relationship with food, like a lot of my clients are, it's not stuff that I want them to suddenly start skipping meals and only eating at certain times. But yeah, I think the claims that are made about fasting and stuff and windowed eating versus what we know are just. Have you read Lifespan by David Sinclair?
No.
So it's a book, and we know how nutrition books go. But he's like a massive like time restricted eating fan. And he's done some of the research. Like in his defense, he's done some research, so it's not like he's not a doctor just saying what he fancies saying. But he's so bullish on how important that is for lifespan, and he makes huge claims like we'll be living to 150 and 200 if we start doing this stuff, based on purely on animal models. And even in his podcast, which there aren't many of, he's like, yeah, well, like, obviously this isn't animals, but we see it on a cellular level in humans. So you're just like, well, there's not. It's obviously very difficult research to carry out in humans. Yeah, which makes it challenging. And the mechanism makes sense. We see it in animals, which makes sense in other living species. But yeah, it's a big stretch to humans. But it does interest me. But like you said, the one thing I struggle with is the difference between recommendations. We know how important having muscle mass is and resistance training is for health. Muscle mass for like not being fragile as we get older, for autonomy, for glucose disposal, things like that. So yeah, how does not spacing out protein throughout the day be better? How's that better for muscle? How's fasting better than all the things we know is optimal for muscle? Where's the difference? Where do we draw the line? Which I think is really interesting. Like we know how important food variety is and getting those different types of plants in. How do you do that 1 meal a day? Really difficult. Like practically. So yeah, no, I think it's a fascinating area, and we'll probably find out more. And I wouldn't be surprised if there is some benefit to eating in shorter window some of the time, or fasting some of the time. I don't know if you ever played around with fast yourself, like actual fast stuff. Yeah, I have as well.
A bit, yeah. It was quite a few years ago before I really got into fitness and coaching and stuff properly. I did proper fast. Like, I think I did a 48-hour once.
Yeah.
And it gets pretty crazy after like 24 hours.
Yeah.
But it was a really interesting experience, actually, and learning experience of like what true hunger feels like, and also how it kind of like peaks and then falls off and all those kind of things. So it was interesting, actually. I know like some of that fasting research that the fasting kind of advocates will point at a lot of the time. Like you say, animal models. There's a rat study that they always point at. I think it's to do with like growth hormone, because that's the thing that they talk about for like muscle growth, which is like it doesn't work that way at all. But that's another story. But like it's funny because the equivalent fasting time in rats compared to their lifespan in a human, that'd be like a month fasting.
Yeah.
So it's like you can't extrapolate these rats to humans.
No.
It just doesn't work.
No, exactly. But they're happy to extrapolate the amount of time that they'd get on their life and turn that to human years. But the other way around, no, not having that.
No.
Which that is a funny dichotomy, isn't it? But yeah, no, I've played around with fast myself, done like between 1 and 3 days. I did a 3-day one probably a few months ago now. Training gets grim, doesn't it? Like second day's worst day. I think third day is actually better than the second day. But any sort of volume on your second day, and like you're a much more accomplished lifter than I am. Like I'm just a general bogan. But yeah, even I can feel it, and I can see why. If I were you, I would not be doing fasting much. But but yeah, no, it's an interesting one. Like you said, I know Martin McDonald spoke about it before, and I'm not his biggest fan as a person. But in terms of nutrition, like having people, and I probably don't agree with him on this, because he says actually sometimes for some people having a 24-hour fast just so they can learn what hunger is and isn't, and actually how it peaks and troughs is a good idea. And in theory, that makes sense, but I don't know many people psychologically that that's a good idea for, if you know what I mean. Like, you start teaching people that fasting is this great idea. There's a lot of people that that's a lot further down the road than they are, and it's probably not the best thing for them. But yeah, in theory, helping people understand that actually you can be hungry and that's fine, and you won't die of it immediately. I think that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, I think it really needs to be couched in the right way. I think, and definitely
with the right person.
It's not like you've got a new client, right? First thing we're going to do is 24-hour fast. Like, that's insane. But also, you need to really caveat and be like, look, we're doing this for a specific reason. There's not magic here. You're not going to magically get gains. It's not something we're going to do every month or whatever. It needs all of that, doesn't it?
I think it's one of those things where is there a better way of helping someone understand that than making them go through that? And sometimes with some things, there's no better way than lived experience of the thing. But I think that's not one of them. I think you can explain to someone, actually, we'll let you be hungry for this period of time throughout the day and watch you be fine.
Yeah, working on like hunger scales as well, like, 1 to 10 scale, pretty classic stuff. Yeah,
pretty much. And like, noticing when you're hungry, when you're not, when you want something else, is mind blowing for a lot of people. I spoke to someone earlier and they were like, "Yeah, I can't believe that," but actually, I know it's when I'm sad about this, because like they had a trauma a few years ago. And they're like, actually, yeah, that's what. And it's the anniversary of that coming up, and I find that I procrastinate on work by just sitting and eating when I know that this other thing would be better. And you're just like, yeah.
Wow, that's huge. Isn't that crazy?
Yeah.
I want to go back to you talking about these dietitians that like couldn't change their minds. Because it reminded me a question that I ask myself a lot and I've struggled with. And I also get people asking me as well. I struggle with it. Is like, how do you know who to trust? And the thing I go around in circles with is like, well, if they're educated, they've got a degree. Like by the time they've got a PhD, they're a doctor, should know what they're talking about. So like, a lot of the people I follow and get information from are PhDs and they know what they're talking about. But also then you see PhDs, doctors that are talking absolute bullshit. So like, it's not 100% guarantee, is it? And it's the same with dietitians, dietetics. Like, that should be a pretty strong guarantee that someone knows what they're talking about. But you see dietitians talking rubbish as well, and like these people that really struggle to change their minds. So and for me, like, I don't have a degree at all, as we've just discussed. I mean, people can choose to trust me or not. That's up to them. But like, I can't say, wow, like, it needs to be at least a PhD for you to trust someone, because like, where does that put me? Like, I think I'm pretty trustworthy, and I hope people would trust what I'm saying. So I go round and round with this. I don't know what the kind of criteria is, except once you've got as much experience as we have, kind of get a feel for people. But the people that we're working with in general public, they don't have that ability. So it's not a surprise how people get fooled. Yeah,
I do the same. And I think I hate it. I used to think like, oh, just do some research and like make sure you look around. And then I think actually, and I hate people saying, oh, just do some research, because people are so, and that's the one thing that degrees are good for, is that they show you how to research, where to look, what to look for, how to interpret a study. People aren't equipped to do their own research on what's good and what's not. Because for some people, do some research, go and read a book on it, and you could go and pick like the Gary Taubes or whatever and read why sugar's going to kill you, and you just go, well, I've done my research. Yeah, but that was shit research. I meant to do good research. And they're like, I don't know what you mean. So I've gone back and forward on that.
To anybody who doesn't already know who that person is, like, medical doctor in research, published research that is peer reviewed, this guy's credible,
Cabbage, it's difficult. And I think the dietitian one's a perfect example, because we think this should be, like you said, this should be qualified, good advice. But if you think where that advice has come from and how many people have like been involved in putting that advice together, publishing it in the first place, peer reviewing it, and then teaching it with like how many people and their biases are all included in that advice getting to that last person, who then has their own biases and interpretation. So when you look at it like that, is it any surprise that we get variation and we don't get people just doing the one thing? And when we do get people all towing the same line, is that because someone at the top had the bias of everyone should do it this way, and they were all taught to follow me, and everyone did? So Yeah, and that's science, isn't it? Like there's never any cut and shut. This is it, and get crack on with your day. But in answer to your question, what I normally do now is just send people that I know that I trust, and just like follow these, and these. That's the easiest way of doing it, rather than telling them what to look for. Because, like you said, we've been in the game a few years. We know what to look for and who is good and who's not good, who's bullshitting. So
I think so. Yeah, I agree. One thing that's just popped into mind is, because you're talking about like the way that science is. I think a good thing for people to look for is like no black and white answers, and the way that people speak, so you get a feel for that as well. So like the Gary Taubes, the less credible people will say, no, this is the only way to do things. This is like magic, effectively, and that should be red flags straight away.
That's true.
You and I, what we were just talking about, like fasting, skipping breakfast. Well, yeah, sometimes good in these situations, sometimes it's not, etc. There's multiple factors involved.
True.
Like, when you hear that, you know you're getting a more balanced view, whether that is, which makes it more likely that it's kind of in the right ballpark, I think.
That's true. I mean? But then on the flip side, are we all just adamant of different things? Aren't we all adamant that everyone should have an individualized approach where it works for them? That in itself is a sort of, that's my one golden rule. So I still have rules like that. So, but no, generally, and again, research, you see it. Most of the time, it'll be like, we found this in this study with these people. This is what we saw. But not always. You'll still get some authors being like, and this is how we solve this problem, and it will be solved forever. And you just go like, based on who you've looked at and what you've looked at and what you've done, how have you drawn the conclusions you've drawn? Because I can't draw those same conclusions. So, yeah, it's an imperfect science. Everyone should stop bothering. I think that's the message. just give up. Because what's the fucking point? That's what I always come back to when I do these questions in my head.
Just train hard and eat clean.
Have a beer and
what you're saying, isn't
it? Yeah.
That's it. Okay. Yeah. Good tangent.
We've done that, haven't we? Is that it? Cool.
That's pretty much it. Well, I'll at least move on. All right.
Yeah.
So, but that was a really good side tangent.
Yeah.
Good chat. I like it. So, moving on to the first level of the game, tutorial level. It's your opportunity to teach something today. So, what is the one thing you wish you could teach everybody, if you could, or at least what do you want the listeners that are listening today to learn?
It's a difficult question, I think, and the more I thought about it, the more I always come back to this answer as a starting point. So it's not the whole answer, but it's the best place to start. Is if you understand what you give a shit about in your life, that makes things much easier to change for. One of the biggest things that I sort of stumbled across, and I did this in a not very scientific way, but I found this over and over again and then Googled the answer for it, which we shouldn't do. Like, you shouldn't try and Google to confirm your own biases around what you think is happening. That's not how science works. But that is what I did. And I just found over and over again that the people that really struggle to change are the ones who either don't know what they're changing for, or the changes don't align with the things that they care about in their life. So obviously, there's someone who is a fan or has done education in ACT and things like that, like value-driven behaviour is a big part of that type of therapy. And I do think values-driven coaching is relatively like new and unheard of for a lot of people, but just makes so much sense that if you know what you care about in your life and you have things that you care about and that you value, you then know who you want to be your best for, what you want to be your best for. And that then makes you more likely, when things are difficult, to go, actually, I'm going to do this because I'm doing it because of this and this higher goal that I have. And therefore, it makes it much easier to give a shit about. The people that struggle are the ones who just go, oh, I just want to lose weight because I'm not happy. And you're like, well, yeah, but why? So one really popular coaching technique is the 5 whys.
Yeah.
So if you say, I want to be healthy, why? Oh, well, I want to be healthy because the doctor said I need to be. Okay, why? Well, because my family have these issues and I don't want to get these issues. Why? Well, because I want to live longer than they do. Why? Oh, because actually I want to spend time with my kids and I really like that. And you eventually get down to, this is the thing that I value the most.
Ding, 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 ding. That's the bit.
Exactly. Yeah. And the other thing that I find with values-driven stuff is that most people say that they value one thing and their behavior shows the exact opposite, and that's why it doesn't stick. So, like, I always give the example when I talk to people or do talks about the mum who says, I really value having more energy to play with my children, or I value energy for connection with other people. And you look at how they're trying to lose weight to get more energy, and it's like horrible detox diet or 200 calories a day sort of thing. You just go, your behavior literally completely contradicts the thing that you're telling me you give a fuck about. And that is exactly why it's not sticking. It makes no sense. So yeah, I think if you work out in your life, and there's loads of ways of doing it, what you give a shit about, you will then realize what you've got to actually try and work towards, and you can make behaviors that actually help you get there.
So good, China.
Stop it.
Nice.
Mm.
That's so good. As well, one of the little things from ACT, acceptance and commitment therapy, that I use really often is the choice point, which is like, for people listening, as Charlie seems to know, you reach a choice point and you can either do towards moves or away moves. So it's like a split, like a fork in the road, and towards moves are towards your values and goals in life and stuff that we're talking about. And the away moves are the opposite, away from that. Such a simple thing, but I've used that with quite a few clients in specific circumstances. Like, this is your goals and values that you're talking to me about. What happens when you're affected by these factors and you make away move? What kind of away moves do you make? Actually, what would be towards moves that would bring you towards your goals? And let's plan on doing those kind of things. It's it's been, and that is just a very small part of this whole values-based. Did you call it values-based coaching? Love that.
Yeah, there's probably better ways of putting it, or actual ways that people have defined, but I think that sums it up quite nicely. A question that I ask clients a lot, and I asked today actually with a client, is ask yourself, does this serve me? Rather than, is this healthy or unhealthy or bad or good?
Nice.
Because you use, like, two examples I give. You could have, say you have a bottle of wine with a friend at a meal, and you haven't seen this friend in ages, you've been working from home all week, sat on your own, feeling a bit shit. Is this healthy? Not really. Like, no one can argue that a whole bottle of wine to yourself is healthy. Not a great idea, is it? Is it good or bad? Well, most people put it in the bad category. Does this serve me? Absolutely. Like, that social connection and that social, we often forget about social and mental as part of health. We always think about physical health. And I think during the pandemic, we saw how important social health was. Does this serve me in that scenario? Absolutely. Whole bottle, like, it's a bottle of wine. You can cut through it the rest of the week. You'll feel shit the next day, but you'd have had a really good time, got some memories, like, well worth it. That same bottle of wine, if you're sat at home on your own and you've drank it because someone cut you up on the way home and your favourite cast member on EastEnders has died, does that then serve you? Absolutely not. Like, you're just a bit pissed off. You could go and do a million other things that would make you feel better than that bottle of wine will. And that's such a better frame of, and it sort of comes back to that sort of choice thing that you mentioned. Which one's going to move me towards the things that I want?
Yeah.
And again, like, you could flip that and say, so many people cut out food or socials to try and get this thing. You say, what do you want? Well, I just want to be happy. But those things make you happy. So actually, you're again completely taking yourself away from the very thing that you say you fucking want in the first place. So yeah, I think values are a really nice place to start. And actually, at the start of coaching out, which I didn't used to do, I do get a few minutes to talk through clients what their values are, and I have a few exercises that I use with them. So a bucket list is quite a nice one, just because it sort of allows you to think, well, actually, like, I've listed all these things and 5 out of 6 of them are travel related. Travel is obviously a value that matters to me, or 5 of them are with other people. Connection with other people is really important. Frustration flipping is another nice one. So think about 20 things that piss you off and then flip them and think, well, what is it that they're stopping you from doing? Oh, I get really pissed off that I spend all my time doing this. Why? Well, actually, I'd rather spend my time doing this. Okay, well, that thing's obviously a thing you value. Let's try and shape your life more around those sorts of things. But yeah, there's a few different exercises that people can use, or you can just get a big list of values and write down the ones that, which is a really common sort of core values exercise. Like, here's a list of all of mine. Here's a question for you. What are yours? What would you say yours are?
My instinct was like, I'll pull up my spreadsheet and I'll tell you, because I've got literally.
Please do.
I'll let you go spreadsheet. I won't do that, because, like, you should know your core values off the top of your head, really, shouldn't you? Or else are they really your core values? But definitely honesty and what's it called when you're like to be yourself? Authenticity. Yeah, and I think for me, connection as well with other people, similar to the stuff that we were talking about, and learning for sure,
Mm,
which I know you're a big fan of. You do a lot of reading.
mm.
What are yours? Only fair?
Good question. One other thing that I get people to do while I think of values is actually add a verb to them. So actually think about how you do them, which is quite nice because otherwise they can feel a bit vague for people. So mine would be, mine's spelled F cash, which I quite like. It sounds like I don't care about money, which is sort of true. So that's quite cool. So freedom for me. So like freedom to do the work I want to do, where I want to do it, which is sort of why online coaching is nice. Curiosity, which is sort of the same as your sort of learning one. And interesting, when we talk about education, like there were years at school. As a kid, I read everything. I just enjoyed learning. School pretty much taught that out of me, and I didn't really get that back until the end of uni, like sort of end of my masters. And I probably would only say that I really started to find my feet with that again in the past year. And like you said, like I do a lot of reading now, and I feel like that's making up for lost time. So yeah, curiosity, authenticity, exactly the same in my work and stuff, which is why I think it surprises people that I used to be shy, because I spent a lot of time working to try and show up as myself online, because that's generally when I enjoy my work the most. I do my best work. And from a business perspective, like it sounds counterintuitive, but if you show up as yourself, people work with you because they're like, I like you for you. As a tangent, that's the hardest bit about social media. And I said this to people a lot, in that if people are saying just be yourself online, and you are, and people unfollow, unsubscribe, argue, etc., feels like a personal attack of, well, I'm just putting me out there. You're basically telling me you don't like me. That's quite difficult to handle. But so yeah, that authenticity is important. Simplicity for me is one, just in life in general. Like I don't really have room for drama or like complexity and stuff. I just want to do my job, enjoy a beer and some food, go home. And then humor's the last one, just because
nice.
it's like having fun. I think that's the whole point. If stuff is like, I laugh at myself multiple times per day, or other people, or things we've said. I just don't think life's very enjoyable if you don't have that.
They're great. But,
and they're all pretty similar to yours, to be fair. They're pretty much synonyms for the stuff that you've said, a lot of them.
Yeah. Like listening to you, I'm like, yeah, I could go for that as well. Like that's the thing with like a list, like you could rank these, and then like you just take like your top 5 or whatever. Because I could, I'll have all of your values as well.
Yeah,
I'll just add them to mine. You know, just
then it's a mouthful,
this pantheon of values. I love those techniques for like finding your values. There's a few things that I've not heard of there that I'll incorporate with my clients and with myself, particularly. Does it serve you? I'm going to start saying that to myself genuinely. I think that's really good.
Yeah, I think it's powerful. I think like there's a few variations on that. Like, will future me thank me for this and stuff like that. There's different ways, or what do I need right now? There are lots of ways of framing a similar question, depending on the scenario. But just having a question, and this is something I spoke about with someone earlier. What we're basically trying to do is create a gap between how you feel and then what you do. So, like, I don't know if you've read Thinking Fast and Slow, Daniel Kahneman, where he talks about this sort of system 1 and system 2 brain. System 1's the impulsive one, system 2's the more rational, like prefrontal cortex type thing. And we're just trying to create that gap so system 2 can kick in and go, this is what we want. These are the things that matter to us. This are all the goals we've got. Now act appropriately, where system 1's like, oh, I feel this, let's do this. So, yeah, a lot of coaching, particularly around food and mindfulness, is just, can we create that space to then shift our attention to something that's going to help us? And a lot of my coaching techniques basically boil down to that, just creating a space for you to make a mindful decision. Intention, which is a word I use a lot with clients, is being intentional with things. And if that's going out on the piss with friends, that's fine, as long as you intended to do that and it happened because you wanted to.
Sounds really familiar. Definitely said pretty much those exact words, I think. Yeah. Between stimulus and response, there's a gap, and that gap is our chance to choose or something. Viktor Frankl, I think. Yeah, nice. There you go. Another good book, Man's Search for Meaning.
Yeah.
Great. That's tutorial level over. Good teach. Time for the boss fight. What is your biggest challenge, or your client's biggest challenge, you or your client?
My biggest challenge is doing all of these things myself. That's constantly my biggest challenge, like consistency with food, with training, with work. All these things that I'm really good at telling other people to do is doing it myself. I'd say like the self-compassion element of the stuff that I teach clients is the hardest stuff to act on myself in terms of, so like for people listening, the 3 tenets of self-compassion are self-kindness, so being kind to yourself rather than being self-critical, mindfulness, and common humanity or shared humanity, which is basically the idea that the only thing that we all have in common is that we fuck up. That's the only shared trait that we all have, is that none of us are perfect, we all make mistakes. And actually knowing that is quite nice, because you can think, well, actually, that's fine because we all fuck up and I fucked up and that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. But I don't know why I find that so difficult. I think I've never been very good at it, and learning about it hasn't necessarily made me loads better at it, maybe a bit better at it. But also, like, when we look at, I don't know if you follow any of like the classic like fitness business pages and things like that, or entrepreneurs in general, it's like it completely contradicts what everyone around you, everywhere, all the time is telling you. It's like the hustle pull mentality is the exact opposite of that self-compassion. Like, well, you've got to be working 25 hours a day, 8 days a week, and if you're not, you're shit. And it's just like trying to sort of have that in my head, but also be more compassionate at the same time. It's just really difficult. It's something I struggle with massively.
Yeah.
So,
I hate that hustle culture, hustle mentality. I absolutely hate that. It sounds really familiar, mate. I'm very similar, and I find that because that is our job as well, and because we are also on the internet, which you pretty much have to be these days, I think, you kind of feel you're even more likely to feel like an imposter and feel some kind of shame almost. I think when that happens, like I know I've had really inconsistent training for a few different reasons, and over the last long time, like a couple of years, I've steadily been gaining weight, and I've struggled to diet during that whole period. Like in periods where I'm like, right, I'm gonna do a diet.
Yeah.
Previously, years past, like I've really successfully dieted, and I've used my own stuff that I teach other people and coach other people through. Just struggled with that recently, and I felt really I felt really, really kind of ashamed about that, and like an imposter. Like, who am I to like? Do you know when it like peaks, and I feel really bad about it, and then I'll go to film a video, and there's been a couple of times where I've been like, I just can't, because I feel like such an imposter. I'm like, how can I tell people how to do stuff right now when I can't even do it myself?
Yeah. No, literally, I resonate with that so much. Like, I'm this year particularly, probably from January onwards, probably about as big as I've ever been. Like, I always think, and I always say to people, like, if I were to do the classic Instagram photos, like a fitness photo shoot type thing, I wouldn't, like, no one would look at me and go, nutritionist. And that's like, and nutritionists isn't a look, and they don't have looks, but it's very difficult to detach yourself from that. So, like, at my leanest couple of years ago, I was probably about 89 kilos, and I probably chill at around 106, 107 now. Now, some of that is more muscle mass, it's 2 years of training, but some of it isn't. And to not feel bad about that. So that on the bad days, you feel awful about it. And on the good days, you think, actually, I've got all these clients that I work with and all this great stuff I do because it doesn't matter and they don't care because I help them. And I've made a massive difference to them, and that's amazing. But yeah, there are times when you do feel that, and I think that's inevitable. But yeah, it's probably my biggest challenge. I think the hustle stuff is just so, and I think what's worse is that there are people that can sort of be going at 100 miles per hour all the time. And they're very few and far between, but some of them end up being successful, like you say. Some of them are on the internet, and they then become the gold standard for everyone else. So, like Gary Vaynerchuk's a perfect example.
Yeah.
He's just, I think some people are just built slightly differently. Well, I mean, everyone is, and he's just built that way. Like, he has a perfect set of family circumstances as a kid, perfect in the sense of allowing him to do this. And I just think everything he's done has been geared towards non-stop work. And that's amazing for him. Like, that's great. He's obviously very successful in terms of what he defines success as. But I don't think a lot of people are like that. And I think a lot of people struggle because, same in the fitness world, like a lot of people are in great shape, but there are a lot of people that could never do like the training volumes that are required for some people to be in great nick. My body can't handle, as my glass back has shown me recently. Like my body doesn't adapt in the same way that other people's do. And on bad days, you think, well, that's just an excuse, you're not trying hard enough. And on good days, you're like, that's the honest truth. I don't adapt particularly well to it. I don't handle massive volumes. My life isn't set up to do that because it's not a massive priority for me. I need to stop taking on other people's priorities as my own because they're not my own. And none of my values are based around being shredded or massive or even lifting well because they're not that important to me. But yeah, it all comes down to implementing stuff yourself is fucking difficult. Which is great because people can relate to you a bit more, I think, because they look at you and go, well, you're not perfect. You don't expect me to be perfect. Let's all be happy. One thing that I actually hate loads, which I've been thinking about recently, are the PTs or any other sort of coaches that go, no, I completely get it. It's even hard for me sometimes. I think, what do you mean for you? Like, who the fuck are you? Like, even I struggle and I'm fucking excellent. They're just like, fuck off. Who are you to say, like, even for me?
Even I, a literal god, sometimes struggle.
Who stands before you as your leader? Even I struggle. Shut up. But, oh, mate, if we were to talk about every issue I got with people in the industry, then we'd be here for a long fucking time.
Absolutely. Maybe we could do a dedicated podcast to just that.
Yeah, please do. Yeah,
I'll be up for it. I think there's a lot.
Yeah, I'm keen.
I think a big factor is like survivorship bias in those things. In fitness, so in like the classic physique people that you see that are just grind hard training, massive volumes all the time. Like they're just the people that survive that training and manage to, you know, they're genetically and environmentally it just worked for them.
Yeah.
You don't see all the people that tried to train like that and failed, you know, because it was too much for them.
Yeah.
And they didn't have the genetics. And it's the same with hustle culture. Like you see these people that are 24/7 grind, and they're just the ones that survive. They're the ones that could do that for whatever reason, because it's the way that they're built, like you say, and psychologically and physically.
Yeah. I've never thought of it as like survivorship bias, but I mean, that's the best explanation for it. And basically the people that did make it to where you are the lucky ones that got intersected by something else in their lives so that they couldn't continue before they've got to the point that you're at, where you're basically ridiculously lean, freezing cold, can't even look at food because it scares the shit out of you, preaching to everyone else about how great it is. And all that happens for the people that got there and people that didn't a lot of the time is that, their life got in the way first. Like they got injured or they got ill or they had a breakdown, and you don't see those people. I personally don't have anything against physique and bodybuilding generally as sports. And I know a lot of people in our industry do. You sort of fall on the other side of it and they're either the best thing ever and a measure of fitness, which they're not, or they're the worst thing ever and they're not. They do massively promote disordered approaches to pretty much every aspect of living. And I do think you have a shelf life in those sports, but yeah, I don't necessarily have something against them. What I do have a massive issue with are coaches coaching everyone the same way, even people that don't have those goals. So I have women that come to me that have struggled with their weight all their lives, for example. And they're like, yeah, well, I did do this bikini plan once. I think, why? Like 1,200 calories a day to look lean, and you don't want to look lean. You've just told me you're not that asked about looking really lean. And that's something that I get a lot in sort of first calls with people that upsets me is I don't really want to get like really lean, or like I'm never going to be really lean. Like no one said you were. Like you don't have to sort of justify or like pre-quantify how lean you're willing to get. Like just you're going to say, actually, I want to change for this and I want to feel better, and that's fine.
Yeah.
But yeah, how do you feel about sort of physique bodybuilding type stuff?
I've heard
not for you personally.
I've heard exactly that you're just saying. A huge. I've worked with bodybuilders. I've prepped bodybuilders to the stage. I think it's absolutely rife with poor coaching, and it just. I mean, if we're going to be honest about it, it just churns out eating disorders.
Yeah,
it really does, and it's tough because I've got nothing against bodybuilding itself, and I think it can be done ethically and like in a good way. So it is tough. I like had this idea a few months ago, and I was like, I'm going to say I'm never going to I'm not going to talk about fat loss anymore. You know, it's like I'm just not going to talk about fat loss anymore. But because of those kind of toxic implications, you know, and it's just less interesting to me. Like it's more interesting if there's another goal. Like if you want to lose a bit of fat for performance reasons for your sport or for like a weight class, that's cool. If you're a bodybuilder, then it's not really about the fat loss, you know. That's just part of your journey as a bodybuilder. The main thing is gaining muscle. But then in order to get to stage, you have to lose fat. So I had this idea. I was like, I don't want to talk about just fat loss for fat loss sake anymore. But the more I went around in my head, I was like, if I like announce, I'm not talking about fat loss anymore. Cool, that sounds like a dramatic thing.
Yeah.
People will be like, oh, so like you're not going to work with bodybuilders because you have to lose fat. And we're like, well, yeah, I am, because that's a different thing. Like, oh, so you're not going to help people get into weight classes? Well, I am, because that's a different thing. Like they've got a different like value driving it. So then it just sounds like a bit of a cop out. Like, oh, you say you're not going to talk about fat loss, but you are really. Like it's just drama, you know.
I think that's the issue that I have with like the anti-diet stuff, which again comes back to black and white thinking. I dislike like anti-diet people almost as much as I hate the really like diet culture side of things, because you're telling people what they can and can't do with their body just in a different way. And I don't get how people don't see that. Like the anti-diet is like, well, you only want to lose weight because of this, and now it's all because of society or the patriarchy or whatever. Some with some valid things within that, 100%. But like, I'm telling people what they can and can't do with their body. Yes, you should try and promote that they do it in a healthy way and they do it for. And I have a friend, Kate Shilland, who's a full nutritionist. She works a lot with teenagers, and when she works with adults, she's like, we can have a weight loss goal, but I want a different one as well, which is a simple approach that I really like.
Nice.
And that was one of the things that actually really changed my practice when I heard that, even though it sounds so simple. It's just like, yeah, I'm not willing to just let you set some arbitrary weight goal and just sprint off towards that. But yeah, if people want to lose weight, that's absolutely fine. But also I think and I'm a bit better at this now, is actually setting out, being realistic with their expectations of what that's going to give them, how it's going to work, what it will look like, and how they'll feel afterwards. Because as we know, like that sort of arrival fallacy of I'll be happy when I get to this. Oh, fuck, I'm here, and I'm actually not any happier at all. And I've just skipped everything in my life to get here, and I'm still not happy. Maybe it wasn't the weight. But no one ever thinks that. They think, oh, maybe it's another 7 pounds away. It's not. It's just not about the weight. But yeah, so I'm certainly not anti-diet. And I think a lot of those sort of terms get thrown around, like health at every size, another one, which I think people misinterpret a little bit. Health at every size, that you should have the right to healthcare and to be treated like a human with healthcare. But do I think that being obese is good for us? No, I don't. And I do think we have an overwhelming evidence base to suggest it's not. And it confuses me that people try and misinterpret that evidence to say that actually, no, it's fine to be whatever weight you want. Like that's patently not true. But that doesn't mean you can dehumanize people in the pursuit of a healthier size. And I think that's where the key difference is for me. So yeah, diet culture can get in the bin, but then so can anti-diet people saying, no, you can't do this with your body, because you're now telling them what they can do, which is the same as diet culture for me.
Yeah, it's that middle ground. It's the lack of black and white thinking, is it? Exactly like we were talking about before. I think weight neutral approaches are really useful, and I will use them interchangeably with weight focused approaches, and I think that's great. So yeah, you'll see people all the time when you talk about health at every size going, oh, so you think that's healthy, do you? Like an obese person? Like it's obviously not. Like, yeah, that's not what it means. I think that really changed my thinking was seeing the evidence, strong evidence that activity had much more of an impact on health than weight. So an active overweight person has got a higher lifespan than an inactive healthy weight person. So actually, Like you don't, because I used to be one of those people. I think like it doesn't matter what you do if you're overweight, like you're unhealthy. The best thing you can do is get down to a healthy weight. Which yes, it's going to help, but if that's a real struggle for you, that's a challenge. You've been trying to do that for years with not much success. Actually, there's loads of other things we can do to improve your health without even talking about weight. These weight neutral approaches. We can increase your activity. We can increase food variety, up your protein intake, do some resistance training, like all this kind of stuff, and look at like stress and sleep, and I could go on.
Yeah, no, 100%. And you often with those sort of people, you inadvertently get some weight loss because they're now doing all the behaviours that you. Yeah. And it's the same. I always come back to this with sort of when people say I was happy at this weight and I'm not at that weight anymore, I'm not happy anymore. Were you happy because of the weight, or were you happy because of all the behaviours that got you to that weight? That's why you were happy. You were training 3 times a week, you're going outside, you were meeting people, you were drinking regularly, eating fruit and veg, and now you're not doing any of those. It's got, like, yes, there's probably a confidence element to how you used to look before because you used to wear different clothes and you used to go out in those different clothes and you did feel great. And there is an element of that. And I think people try and disregard that. And I think I've probably been guilty in the past of going, no, you're not more confident at that weight than you are at this weight. It's actually just about this. But there is an element of, I like looking like this. So, yeah, often it's just the behaviours that get you there rather than the sort of outcome, which again, surprise, surprise, it comes down to the sort of process and enjoying that than it does the outcome of it. Because in theory, like realistically, there's no real outcome. For most of the time, you're just trying to live. That sounded deeper than it probably was, to be honest. It's just life, man.
I was just musing on that there. Yeah. Quote, Charlie Beestone, 2022.
It's just life, man.
It's just life, man. All right. Quick one. Cheat code. What is one quick tip that you can share that makes a big difference?
I think learning, but then I'm biased as someone who enjoys learning. But like I posted on Instagram the other day, Warren Buffett learns loads and he's a billionaire. So if you don't need, what more motivation do you need than that? But no, I just think like everyone has something that interests them. And I just don't get, I think most people have a more purposeful, fulfilling life if they pursue those interests and learn more about them. And the people that I see that are the least happy, and this is just my personal belief and people can disagree, are the people that have a job they don't enjoy and they sit in front of the TV to cope with the life that they've just come away from that they don't enjoy. And there's nothing to that. And then they go and get absolutely hammered all weekend and then return to the same life. And they live for 2 weeks off in August where they can go and get hammered somewhere else where it's warmer. And I just think like there can't be anything fulfilling in the long term to that. So I think learning is that sort of gateway to actually having a fulfilling life, because it's just, it doesn't matter what the fucking thing is that you're interested in. But, and I know for me personally, so this is probably just from my experience, that how my life has changed when I've embraced the fact that actually I like to learn rather than run away from it as a teenager, because there's nothing cool about reading books as a teenager. But now I'm an adult and I'm allowed to read books, so I'll do what the fuck I want. People wonder how I put, and I'm not trying to glorify how much I work. I don't work loads. And they say, oh, you used to work all the time. And I just read a lot. So I'm not probably like you, and like in my spare time, I'll pick up a book on psychology, or I'll read a journal article, or I'll be musing on some other issue that I've got at work and stuff. When I was at Hodby, I was doing obviously the standard 48-hour week there, and then I was coaching alongside it, trying to build it up so that I could leave Hodby. And I was doing another 35, 40 hours. And the only time where it felt difficult was at work. It was never the time between like 5 and 8 when I was working in the morning and 8 till 10 in the evening that was hard. It was the bit in between. So yeah, I just think there's so much that people can do if they just want to learn about stuff, and you don't know where it'll take you. Particularly, I think this is the best time ever to be doing it, because you can monetize stuff that you're interested in very easily, and people do it all the time with blogs and Instagram and YouTube and that bollocks. So it's not just about, and I don't agree that everything should be a means to an end where you've got to earn money from it, but for a lot of people you can if you wanted to. Like few collected fucking like power pods or something. Do you remember them, the little football ones with the massive heads that came in chocolate? You could collect them and you probably do a fucking YouTube thing or sell them on eBay and make loads on it, but you don't have to enjoy something. Yeah, I just think learning.
You do a huge amount of reading, it seems. How many books have you read so far this year?
I think it's something around 47.
47 already. Like for reference, we're recording this at the end of May. 47 already.
Yeah.
That's more than 2 a week.
When you put it like that, it does sound like a lot. I mean, not all of them are long.
2 a week, I think.
Yeah, not all of them are massive. Some of them are rereads as well. But yeah, and that hasn't really felt like I'm not pushing myself to hit a number by the end of the year. I just read in my spare time. So normally about an hour before I start work, I'll read. I'll probably read for an hour and a half before bed. I switch off my phone pretty early because you're probably like me, like your job's on your phone a lot. So you're on your phone a lot, and I fucking hate it. I always say if I didn't do the job I do, I wouldn't have social media, I don't think.
Wow, yeah.
Probably not. I have more people's numbers.
Point where I'm just scrolling, because I've been doing that kind of stuff, but then you're just on Instagram and you're like, I don't even know what I'm doing anymore. I just get to the point sometimes I'm just like, get away from me. Like,
distracted by it. Like I'll be on a phone call with someone. Yeah, with my Instagram open on my laptop and scrolling on my emails. Just like, what the fuck are you doing? I think it really starts you being present. So,
yeah.
So yeah,
I'll my girlfriend will pick each other up for it all the time. So she'll be like, "Why are you scrolling?" When we like doing something else or watching TV or whatever together. I'll be like, "No, forget it. I'll put it down."
Yeah, same. And to be fair, like my girlfriend's a social worker, so her work's grim, and I find that she's like that a lot, particularly when work's bad. Same with TV and stuff, just mindless.
Yeah.
Something to, and yeah, I find that with a lot of people, like it comes back to sort of values-driven way of life and things. Like if you don't enjoy what you're doing in your life, then you end up having to try and hide from your life, and then you spend your life either not enjoying it or trying to shy away from all the shit that's going on. And that's not personally not how I'd like to lead my life. So yeah, so I'll generally like stick my phone on charge downstairs or something now. I bought an alarm clock, best thing I did, and then just sit and read a book for an hour and a half. I don't like using a Kindle. I'd rather have paperbacks, but just from a cost perspective, I use a Kindle. Just who can afford that many books?
I've gone backwards and forwards on it. I didn't like. I used to read on a tablet in a very similar way to a Kindle a long time ago, which is nowhere near as good as a Kindle, but I did. And then I kind of got out of the habit of reading, and then I started reading paperbacks. And I'd make notes in them, write to dog ear the corners, all that kind of stuff. I like that, and I read more. And then that kind of dropped off as well. And then I got a Kindle. I got a Kindle for my birthday this year, and straight away, just huge increase in reading again, just because I have it with me all the time. I can switch between books, which I do quite often. It's much better now at making notes, like you can highlight notes and stuff on a Kindle. It's fantastic. I love it, and I'm reading a lot more. Have you got any? You got any top tips for reading or for reading more? Reading in general or reading more?
So I don't even know if I should admit this, but I will. I have a website where I find books that are significantly cheaper, and by that I mean free. And that's a big hack because it is expensive, and I do feel bad for doing it, but I do it. So if the police listen to this, I'm fucked, but they'll never pin it on me anyway. But in terms of actual reading, I think again, it comes back to that sort of intentionality. If you find yourself scrolling, putting your phone down and picking a book up instead, having books everywhere helps. So I've always got a book downstairs, a book upstairs, what I've written in this book somewhere. Reading more than one book is a huge one. So many people just read the same book. If they get stuck on it, they just stop reading for months, and that baffles me. I've generally got 4 to 6 books on the go at a time, which again, when you think about it, and then every time you're reading something else, 2 books a week's not actually that hard.
Yeah.
Whereas it's almost like listening to the same person for 15 hours at a time. I couldn't do it.
Yeah.
But listening to 4 or 5 different people over 15 hours could do easily. So 4 or 5 different books. And just stuff like, I think people try and censor what they read. Well, not censor, but try and pick stuff that doesn't necessarily interest them.
Yeah. Because they should.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Sometimes it's because like people have recommended a book and everyone's reading it, so they read it and it's shit. Sometimes it's because they want to appear learned and they pick up something that there's no interest to them and they try and read it and it doesn't interest them still, so they don't read it very long. Like and that's another thing is that quitting books I've become better at. If I don't enjoy a book, I'll put it down and just stop reading it.
Yeah.
And I probably choose better now as a result of that. Here's a question for you. What do you do with your notes?
So when I used to make notes in paperbacks, when I read paperbacks, when I finished the book, I would flick through and I would copy my notes into an electronic notes.
Mm-hmm.
So I've got them in one place.
Nice.
And I'll be honest, most of them sit there and I never look at them again. But occasionally there'll be times where, I remember that thing from a book. And because it's in an electronic note, I'll be able to search for the kind of phrase or the author, if I remember it, or the name of the book or whatever. And you can look over it and kind of remind yourself of what you read. I think it's not a big deal if you never look at those notes again.
No.
It's just the act of saying, yes, this bit is important, and also kind of adding your own thought to it really helps kind of build that web of knowledge, I think.
Yeah, no, I 100% agree. I'm glad that you said you use those notes and take them, so I do. So I went down a rabbit hole on this about a year and a half ago. Like I was proper obsessed with productivity, which I'm not as much now because I think a lot of it is down to avoiding procrastination. And procrastination is normally because you don't enjoy the work you're doing. So actually, if you find better work to do, particularly for me, because I have a choice, some people don't have a choice, then you don't procrastinate as much. And that's generally the antidote to that for me. But I don't know if you've ever heard of a guy called Tiago Forte. So he's a big productivity guy.
Like tangentially, because it's funny, I've been learning Notion, the website Notion. So I've been watching like YouTube videos, and there's like Thomas Frank, who does productivity, and he does Notion stuff. And he's mentioned like Tiago Forte's method. What was it? It's like a 4-letter. Say again.
Building a second brain.
Yeah, so he talks about that. Yeah. And there's like a 4-letter acronym as well, which is
I know what you mean.
Systems. It's like something SS systems and something.
Yeah.
So yeah, I've only heard his name. I've never actually seen his stuff.
So during lockdown, I went down like a Notion rabbit hole trying to find what the best software is. And basically, there's not a best software, but just stick to what I go with it. So I use something called Roam Research now.
Yeah, I've heard of that as well. Yeah.
Which is all like, it's basically a blank canvas for you to backlink. And so like if I search a word, like you say, or an author, all of the stuff that I've ever made notes with comes up. So I do the same with book notes, which when in our sort of job, when you're like a lot of my check-ins kind of are, this resource would be really good for you actually. I can just go and find it, or this quote's really useful. Social media, content creation, like I don't have to think of many ideas because they're all there from other people. So that's really useful. But yeah, no, I'm glad that it's not just me that spends a bit of time going through their paperbacks and writing all the notes up and using like my clippings on Kindle to copy and paste all and stuff like that.
Yeah, when it's on Kindle, it's easy because it just organizes them all for you. You can see them by book, clips, notes, etc. Yeah, there's extensions as well, isn't there? That copy.
Yeah, Readwise, which is like £7, which puts them all in most of the popular like knowledge management softwares.
Yeah,
getting some really fucking nerdy stuff now. But yeah, during lockdown, I went through trying to find the best one, like task list app and all that sort of bollocks. But I've now settled on a sort of system for how I work. I spent more time trying to work out how to work than actually fucking working. That's my procrastination really, is trying to optimize things. Rather than just do the fucking work. That's my thing. So, but yeah, no, I think knowledge management makes sense. There's nothing wrong with reading a book and getting rid of it, but I think like that's sort of why you read stuff. I can't remember everything, but I can remember that they spoke about that in that book, and that was really useful. I'm going to go back and read that.
Yeah. I think reading is one thing where people like to make up rules for some reason. And one of them is like, you should remember like everything you read. Like you don't at all. No. Like it doesn't matter if you just finish a book and someone says, "What was that about?" You go, I ain't got a clue. Like it's in there somewhere, and like it just all builds up. And at the I find at the most random times, someone will say something, and I'll go, "Oh, that reminds me of like this quote by an author." You know, and like where's it come from? But it's in there somewhere.
That's another thing with the reading as well, in that you don't have to completely absorb every single word. That's how I read. I don't speed read, but I read quicker than other people just because I'm sort of skimming for useful words or ideas or phrases or quotes. And if someone's just telling me about a holiday they had in France, it's like I will skip a paragraph because I don't care. So like I think people trying to read it like a book where they have to remember every single word. And I think that's probably one of the reasons I'm not great with fiction, is that I sort of just skip bits till I get to the interesting bit.
Yeah.
And in some fiction books, you've lost half the part.
You get lost. Yeah.
So that's probably why I'm not great at fiction.
That is exactly the kind of rules that people make up. Like, you got to do one book at a time, start to finish, can't skip anything. Like, got to read every word.
Yeah.
Take it all in. Like, you can skip sections, you can skip paragraphs. If it's shit, stop, move on. Have multiple,
a lot of books are shit as well.
Books so you can skip between them.
Yeah,
absolutely.
I think, and also there's a lot of the time when I read a book, I think not got anything from that, and that's because it's not the right time for me to read that book. 18 months later, read that book, it's gold.
Yeah.
Like Peter Thiel's like business book was one of those. Someone bought it me when I first wanted to be work for myself. None of it made fucking sense, but read it now. Having done business a couple of years, that makes sense now. I think a lot of books are like that, but yeah, I think you'll probably know Naval Ravikant and like heard some of his stuff and listened to some stuff. Yeah, you might not, to be fair. That's a book that I'll recommend for you if you haven't. But he's like a angel investor, philosopher type bloke, and he always says there's so many books that could be a tweet or could be a blog post, and people have just made cash on them being books. A great example of that I always think of. Have you ever read the Checklist Manifesto?
Yes. So we've had this conversation in DM, I think, and I have
we?
Exactly the same thing.
Yeah, we have actually. Yeah, no, I remember that. It's just like checklists are great. That's how I'd. They used them in flights and they're great. They weren't using them in hospitals and it was shit. And then they started using them. It was great. But the whole book is just like, this is why flights are great. This is why hospitals were shit. And then we tried this in left bollock surgery and it was great there as well. So we thought, I wonder if this would be good for right knee surgery. And we tried it and it was good. And you think, how the fuck have you got a book out of this? But that's the majority of books for me. It's just like, this is the story. We'll tell you what we're on about in the first paragraph. And then we're just going to give you anecdotes, which some of them are great. Some of them are shite. For the whole book.
My brother was reading, he was like, Can't Hurt Me.
David Goggins. The client made me read that.
Yeah, I didn't think much to it. And I was like, I don't really fancy it. And I looked up like I can't remember what app it was, but it was one of those like snaps, like it's summarized in like 5 pages or whatever.
Like Blinkist type thing.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
And
I thought I'll read that. And if it like grabs me and I get some good like main points out of it, then I'll read the whole thing. And I read the Blink or whatever it was. I was like, what's the main point here? It's like take control of your own life or something. I can't even remember what the point was, but I had like one main point that was like pretty lame. And I was like, no, read that.
I read it and it was like it's a weird read actually, because a client of mine was obsessed with it because she went through like a big weight loss journey and has now done like incredible things with like in terms of physical performance. And it's just like his story is horrendous, like how he was treated by stepdad and things like that. Like he was seen and experienced things that you would never wish on someone. And then it comes back around to this point of your body is capable of more than you think it is, which is true. And we know that from research that's true. But you just think, yeah, that's all great. But like your circumstances literally built you to have that and all the good and bad that comes with it. So trying to just say, well, everyone's like this, I just don't. You're missing a big part of what's actually made you there. Chris Williamson from Modern Wisdom always speaks about this, and like, if you want to be someone, you say, I'd love to be them. You have to want to be all of them and have all of it. So like, I want to be Tiger Woods, but his dad bullied him and was like racist to him and stuff as a kid and was like forced him to do things. If you want to be him, you have got to be all of it. That athlete that you want to be might have had an eating disorder or be abused by one of their coaches as a kid. If you want to have the success, you've got to have all the stuff that took them there. And when you think about it like that, you probably don't want. You're probably quite happy with your lot. But yeah.
Nice. On books, I'm currently reading a book called The Second Mountain.
I've not read that, don't you?
Not read that one?
No.
It's really good, actually. But it reminded me of it when you were talking about like people don't like what they do, and that's a big issue. That's like a knock-on effect to lots of things. So second mountain, I'm only midway through it, but the key thing is you like climb 2 mountains in your life, and the first mountain you climb is like you trying to reach success and doing what you think you should do in a career or whatever it is that you're doing. And at some point, most people realize that there's another mountain to climb, which is completely different to that, which is about transcendence of self and like doing stuff for the community and giving back and like finding your values and what you want to do in life, you know? So it kind of reminded me of that when you said, "Oh, people are in a job
there's a quote somewhere, isn't there?
Sorry,
like there's a quote somewhere. It's like your life starts. I can't remember what the quote is. When you like your second life, your real life starts when you something about how there is that sort of transcendence of your life actually starts when you realize what your life's about. Pretty much. That's quite interesting though. And I guess my issue then is, can you not have both at the same time?
Yeah, well, a bit is talked about already in what I've read is that some people skip the first mountain completely and they go straight to the second. So yeah, I think there's a bit of both. But yeah, I'm trying to remember, think of that quote that it's like when you realize,
you know the one I mean?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, it's like your real life starts when you realize that this other stuff doesn't matter. Material stuff doesn't matter. Seems like that.
Yeah, I can't even think who said it. No.
All right, we'll move on and we'll wrap up soon. So last little bit, end of the game, new game plus. You're going to start the game again. What stuff are you taking with you, and what are you going to change in this run through?
So I think I answered this one. I think I'll stick with my answer when you've asked me this before. I don't think I'd change anything that I've done. I would just try and work out what I wanted and who I was earlier. But having said that, is that even possible if you don't go through all of it before you get to this point? Without sounding too deep. But yeah, I wish I'd been myself earlier rather than trying to be other people first and then realise that being yourself had to make you happy anyway. Which sounds ridiculously wanky, but that is the honest truth of it. But like you probably found this as well, particularly doing my job now. My first few years, probably first year or so of social media was fucking dreadful because you just putting stuff out that you think A, people want you to be, and B, people want you to post, and they don't. They want you to be yourself and teach them that way. I have loads of like nutritionists coming out of degrees asking me about social media and stuff. And I'm like, just post what people want to know about in your style of teaching, your voice. What is someone Googling? It's a really good question. No one's Googling like best sources of vitamin K because no one gives a fuck. And that's the honest truth. The amount of infographics I see, like, this is how you can get more vitamin K. Even I don't remember that shit because I know where to look for it. That surprises people actually. And like a lot of nutritionists I know as well, when you say what's a really good food source for obscure vitamin or mineral, can't remember off the top of my head. Because they're like, how often do I need that? And why can I not go to all the books that I know that are good reference books to find that in 2 seconds? I can still find it better than someone. Do I know off the top of my head? No, I know useful stuff that's going to help people. And it's rarely, how do I get more vitamin K? So back to the question. I don't think I'd change much. I don't. Like everything that I've done to get to this point was quite incoherent in the way that it was structured. Like it's not the path I thought I would have followed. But now looking back at it, it all makes sense. So I started in sport. I, worked with a strength athlete, so Chloe Brennan, who's like strongest at her weight in strongwoman. She lifted the Dinny Stones not long ago. Was the first woman to do that in America. So you might have seen that lift on Instagram. Yeah, she's brutal. Yeah. So I worked with her when I first started out. I don't know. And then worked with her friend, boyfriend, etc. And that's how I got into strength sports, was through her. And just, so I was just working in sport, and I was like, well, actually, I can work in strength sports easy enough. And then working with strength sports, a lot of it was women in their 30s, 40s, and 50s who found strength sports as a means of trying to lose weight and exercising to lose weight, found that they loved the performance side of competing, but still had the whole hang-ups around food that women of that age do around diet culture and slimming world and all that bollocks. And then I ended up being interested in relationship with food and performance.
Mm.
And now my work is relationship with food and sort of cognitive performance, and how do the two align, and they've sort of combined to go towards that values-based coaching type thing. So everything that I've done has led me to this point where I am professionally content. So actually, I wouldn't change a single thing, because there's all sorts of stuff that I learned that I didn't think was useful that's now useful. So I'll keep the same game if that's all right.
I just keep playing.
I keep playing. Yeah,
that's why this is a difficult question, because that is the classic answer. Like, I won't change anything because it's all led me to who I am now.
Yeah.
You know? But my answer is very similar to yours in that you know, I've had a bit of like a revolution of self. I mean, that sounds even wankier than the stuff you just fucking hell. In the last few years, where I've realised that, you know, I've not truly been myself for the majority of my life. So, like, would I want to go back and realise that earlier? I think probably, yeah. You know, I think that probably would be on the whole a better thing. You're not going to end up in the same place. That's the thing that you kind of got to accept.
Yeah.
Like, you know, people worry about going back in time, and if you could, you know, time machine, like changing the future, like, well, you wouldn't know anyway. So, like, why does it matter? Like, if it's better, then that's fine, you know?
Yeah. What's next then for you?
Next for me? So my day job is in the RAF. I have put my notice in, I'm leaving. So end of the year, I'll be out and I'll be coaching full time. So like I said, doing this coaching, strength and nutrition coaching, one-to-one online. Simple stuff. Just trying to be like you, big man.
I don't think you are, mate. And if you are, I really do pity you. If that's truly what you're saying, which I don't think it is, I'm so sorry. But, no, it's interesting, isn't it?
What you were saying about social media, like, I feel like I'm still trying to work that out. You know, I've gone backwards and forwards so much on social media. I'm like, oh, should I make like infographics? Should I make, you know, the carousels with like loads of info and stuff? And then like, no, I'll just, you know, low effort stuff, posting memes. Like, I've been every which way, you know.
Yeah,
I kind of like the focus of Instagram on Reels at the minute. I know a lot of people are like, oh, God, you've got to make Reels or else you can't do anything. I'm like, well, at least it kind of makes the decision for you. You just make Reels, you know, make under a minute videos, providing some value. I can do that. Gone up to 90 seconds recently, actually.
Yeah, true.
But the other part of that is like, the shorter ones still do better. So like, if you can do 15, 30 seconds, like, that's still beneficial. I struggle with that. I struggle to cut
I just
down.
don't like just video full stop for me. I don't like. I'm a better writer than I am video, I think, or speaker. I enjoy writing more.
Yeah.
Like emails, where I can write longer form stuff, come more naturally to me than video.
Your emails are great. For anyone listening, join Charlie's email list. Link in the description.
Sure. But that's, and when it comes back to being like authentic, like, again, they used to be shit because I tried to do something there wasn't. Whereas now it's just like, if no one reads it but I amuse myself, then that's mission accomplished for me, and that's fine. And I do amuse myself with them. So, but that's why I do them. I like the Instagram stuff is my more worky type work. Some people like follow my Instagram stuff and unsubscribed very early on the emails because they didn't like them, and that's fine. Well, it's not fine, but I only cry a bit. But yeah, no, social media is one of those things where, like, and I've paid money for like a lot of business help in terms of some of the fitness coaches and stuff like that, and various people. I've literally recently signed up for a different one, and it's a minefield, isn't it? It's working out what works for you that also works for people. But when it comes back to learning, like, I've loved learning about the business side of it and how to run a business and actually promote a business and like copywriting, marketing, all that sort of stuff. Because it's psychologists now. I find that really interesting. Loads of like colleagues of mine are like, "Oh, how do you spend so much time on social media? And why do you like?" I just can't do it. You can. You just put it at the bottom of your list. I love it, and I find it really interesting. It's like a big experiment to me because the narrower you get on nutrition, the less there is to learn. And that's not sound arrogant, but like there's only so much that's new at a time. Whereas that's just a whole new thing to me, and it comes back to that curiosity of, I know fuck all about this. Where can I start? And I really enjoy that part of it. But yeah, no, it's a minefield, isn't it?
I could definitely ask you more about the business side of things and all that kind of stuff, but we'll do that offline, I think, because I'm interested in that. I'm not sure anybody else. Well, I'm sure some people.
No, fair enough.
You know,
well, we've already gone over an hour and a half, haven't we? We'll have to do it again, mate.
Charlie said before we started recording, "Oh, you're not going to get an hour and a half out of me." I'm not.
Get 20 minutes.
And look at that, we've gone well over time. I was aiming for an hour, but that was a fantastic conversation, Charlie. Really interesting stuff. I'm sure anyone listening is going to get some really good, I'd say nuggets, but it's like it's more than that. Loads of good stuff in that conversation we just had. Thank you very much for joining me today.
Thank you for having me.